It started with a sound. Not a scream, not a crash, just the sharp, unmistakable buzz of my wife's phone on the marble counter. I wasn't supposed to be home. She thought I'd be at the mechanics all morning getting the brakes checked. But I'd finished early and didn't text her because I wanted to surprise her with breakfast. Instead, I got something else entirely. She wasn't in the kitchen, but her phone was there, screen lighting up with a message that changed the way I breathed. Hope your clueless husband doesn't catch on. Can't wait to see you tonight. It hit me like a brick to the chest, but not because of the words. No, what cut deep was the contact name. It came from Brian, office daddy. It was written like a joke, something flirty and stupid, but it felt like poison. Before I could even think, she walked in. Hair still damp, bathrobe on, smiling like nothing was wrong in the world. I thought you were at the shop, she said casually. Like we weren't standing on the edge of a cliff. I showed her the phone. Just held it out. Didn't say a word. Her eyes dropped to the screen, and for a split second her smile cracked. But then it was back. Fake. Controlled. Oh my God. She laughed. Like I was the one who was being ridiculous. It's a joke. You're seriously gonna act like this over a dumb message? Brian's a clown. He sends that stuff to everyone. Everyone. That word landed heavy. Everyone. I didn't believe her, but I also didn't react. I just looked at her. And maybe that scared her a little, because her voice changed. More defensive, more clipped. Don't start with your jealousy crap, Josh, she snapped. You always overthink things. I wanted to explode. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded. All right, I said. You're right. My bad. She blinked. That threw her off. I never backed down like that. Never gave in without a fight. She stood there a moment longer, then shrugged and walked past me to grab her coffee. Like the moment hadn't just happened. Like the message was nothing and I was just being silly. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I made some calls. I dug through our phone plan, pulled up her location history, dug through 6 months of bank transactions. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe I just wanted to prove myself wrong. Maybe I wanted to see that I'd overreacted. But no. What I found was dinner receipts in neighborhoods she said she hated. Late-night Uber rides from addresses I didn't recognize, and a pattern, Tuesday and Thursday nights. Like clockwork, she'd stay late for work, only she wasn't at the office. Not once. Still, I waited. I played the long game, because I knew something bigger would crack. And this morning, it did. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating nonstop on the nightstand. 24 missed calls. 37 unread messages. All from her. Something was on fire. And I didn't have to guess long. The first voicemail started with frantic breathing and ended with her begging me to just call her back, please. One message said, it's not what it looks like. Another said, I need you to trust me right now. But the last one was the one that did it. He was never supposed to come to the house. I didn't know he would. God, please just talk to me. He came to the house. And I wasn't there. But I'm going now. And I have no idea what I'm walking into. The drive back home was strangely quiet. Not in the way silence usually feels, peaceful still, but like the calm right before a storm smashes through your windows. My phone kept lighting up beside me, her name flooding the screen like a siren, but I didn't touch it. I wanted to hear it from her mouth, see her eyes when she tried to talk her way out of this mess. When I pulled into the driveway, the curtains were all drawn shut, every light inside the house on. That wasn't normal. She never kept the curtains closed during the day. Ever. I took a deep breath and walked up to the front door. It was unlocked. The second I stepped inside, I knew something had happened, something big. The living room looked untouched, but there was a tension in the air like the house itself was holding its breath. Then I heard voices. Hers. And another one, male, low, nervous. Not angry. Not threatening. Just cornered. I followed the sound down the hall and into the kitchen. She was standing there, arms crossed, leaning against the fridge like she was trying to act casual, but her face was flushed, hair messy, and she wasn't wearing shoes. Across from her, seated at the edge of the kitchen table, was him. Brian. Office daddy himself. He looked up when I walked in, his eyes wide. Like a deer staring down headlights. My wife, on the other hand, didn't flinch. She just said, Josh. Listen, this got way out of hand. I didn't say anything. You weren't supposed to come back. He was just here to talk. That's all. He found out I was thinking about ending things with him and I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because of how rehearsed it sounded. Like she had prepared this speech in the mirror, practicing the right amount of guilt, the pauses, the fake sincerity. It was disgusting. Talk, I finally said, stepping forward. You invite your little office fantasy over to my house to talk? While I'm gone. Brian stood up then, hands raised. I didn't know you'd be home, man. I swear. Don't call me man. He backed up a step. My wife moved between us like she was afraid I'd lunge. I wasn't going to touch him, I wasn't going to give either of them that satisfaction. This wasn't supposed to happen this way, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. What way was it supposed to happen, exactly? I asked. You sneak him into our home and then what? He leaves before I get back? You wash the sheets and pretend it was just a wine night with the girls again. That made her eyes flash. Don't be dramatic, Josh. Dramatic. That word. That smug, dismissive tone. It snapped something inside me. I turned to Brian. So, how long? He looked at her, like he needed permission to answer. She didn't say anything. 8 months, he said quietly. 8 months. My vision tunneled for a second, the corners of my sight blurring like the air had been sucked out of the room. I'd taken her to Mexico for our anniversary during that time. Bought her that expensive necklace she said she always wanted. Wrote her a damn letter about how much I believed in us. Get out, I said. Brian didn't move. I stepped closer. I said get out. He left without another word, brushing past me like a shadow, eyes on the floor. The second the door clicked shut behind him, it was just us. Her and me. She didn't apologize. Didn't cry. She just crossed her arms tighter and said, well, I guess it's all out in the open now. Like she was relieved. Like I was the one who'd been hiding something. And I realized in that moment, she wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught. That I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the woman I used to think I knew. And all I could feel was this strange mixture of disgust and disbelief. Not heartbreak, not yet. That would come later. This was something colder, sharper. She started pacing like she was the one betrayed, running her hand through her hair, muttering under her breath. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her unravel. Finally, she stopped and faced me, arms still crossed, like she needed a shield between us. Look, Josh, I'm not going to stand here and let you twist this. Things haven't been right between us for a long time. You've been distant. You've stopped caring. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're blaming me? I'm saying I felt like a ghost in my own house, she snapped. You work late. You're always tired. You don't ask me how I'm doing anymore. And Brian, he noticed. I almost laughed again, but it wasn't funny this time. It was insane. So instead of talking to me, you let him crawl into your life like a parasite? Into our house? She didn't answer. Her silence was more honest than anything she'd said all morning. I cooked for you. I washed your car before interviews. I drove you to your mom's when you didn't feel like talking. I covered your lies when you forgot your meetings and came home smelling like a man I've never met. And I still told myself you were just tired. Just overwhelmed. You made me doubt my gut over and over. Now she looked at me, really looked. But there was no shame in her face. No remorse. Just a hardened defiance, like I was inconveniencing her. What do you want me to say? She asked. That I'm sorry? That I made a mistake? Fine. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. There. But the way she said it, flat, robotic, proved she didn't mean it. Not one word. You're not sorry for anything, I said. You're sorry I walked in before you had time to clean up the evidence. She scoffed. Don't be dramatic. There it was again. That word. Like she was swatting me away like a fly. I stepped back and shook my head. Do you even hear yourself? Do you understand what this is? What you did? This wasn't a drunken one-time thing, or a moment of weakness. 8 months. That's a life. A separate life you built while standing in mine. I needed someone who actually paid attention to me, she said. He made me feel seen. I blinked. And I made you feel invisible? You made me feel boring, she said, eyes sharp. Predictable. Safe. Brian made me feel alive. That was the last nail. I felt something click into place inside me, like a switch had been flipped. The part of me that wanted to save us just shut off. I want you. She didn't respond. By tonight, I added. Pack what you need. You can come back for the rest when I'm not here. Now she was blinking. You're kicking me out of our house? This house was built on loyalty, I said. You demolished your side of it. So yeah, I'm kicking you out. Her mouth opened like she was going to argue, then shut again. She stared at me, and for the first time, something resembling fear flickered in her expression. Not fear of me, but fear of consequences. Real ones. Don't make this ugly, she muttered. You'll regret it. I stared right back. You already made it ugly. And if you think I'm going to regret cutting out a liar and a coward, then you've been living in your fantasy world too long. She left the kitchen without another word, and I didn't follow. I just stood there, alone, surrounded by the ghost of our marriage, and realized something terrifying. I hadn't even begun to process what she'd done, but that time was coming. She was gone by sunset. I didn't help her pack. I didn't stand in the doorway to watch her leave. I didn't even care where she went. She moved through the house like a stranger, grabbing her things, slamming drawers, slapping hangers into a suitcase like she wanted me to hear her pain. But I stayed in the kitchen, sitting at the table, listening to the sound of our life being ripped apart in real time. When the front door finally shut behind her, there was no dramatic goodbye. No final look back. Just the sudden, almost shocking stillness of being alone. But it didn't feel peaceful. It felt radioactive. And that silence, it didn't last long. 2 hours later, her sister called me. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't ask for my side. She jumped straight into it, voice sharp, words like bullets. What the hell happened? She's crying, she's a mess, what did you do to her? What did I do? I didn't even yell. I just said, ask her who Brian is. There was a pause, a long one, and then she said, wait, are you serious? I hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone started blowing up again. Her mother. 2 friends I barely talked to. One of them even had the audacity to tell me every marriage has its cracks. You shouldn't be throwing her out like trash. Like trash. Right? Because I was the villain now. That's when I realized she'd been spinning the story. She'd gotten to them first. She was controlling the narrative, telling everyone I was cold, controlling, that I'd emotionally abandoned her and made her feel unloved. She was painting herself as the desperate wife who slipped, not the calculating liar who carried out an 8-month deception with a man she brought into my home. The betrayal didn't stop at cheating. It went deeper. It was the lies, the manipulation, the strategic dismantling of my character to protect hers. And the worst part? It was working. By morning, my inbox was full of messages from mutual friends either checking in or not so subtly suggesting that I take some responsibility. People who didn't know a thing about the last 8 months. People who never saw the shift in her, the coldness behind her eyes, the excuses that never quite made sense. She was running a campaign, and I was the collateral damage. But I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. Not yet, because I wasn't done watching. Later that day, I logged into the home security app. Not to snoop. I just wanted to feel like I had some control again. I flipped through the recent footage, not expecting anything, and then I saw it. 3 days ago. Middle of the night. While I was out of town for a work trip. The front door opened at 2:17 a.m. A man stepped inside. Tall. Hoodie up. Didn't even look around like he was nervous. She met him in the hallway. No words. She just grabbed his face and kissed him like she'd been starving. And then they disappeared into the bedroom. Our bedroom. I stared at the screen. Rewound. Watched again. And again. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't scream. I just sat there, realizing for the first time how deep this went. She hadn't been sorry because she thought it was just a message. A flirty moment that she could laugh off. But this? She had no idea I'd seen it. That I knew. And now I had something she didn't, the truth. And it was time to start using it. I didn't rush. That was the part that surprised me most. I didn't spiral. I didn't break down. I didn't fall into some melodramatic scene with a bottle and a half-written apology text. I got quiet. I got still. And I got focused. The next morning, I made coffee in silence, sat at the table, and pulled out a yellow notepad from the junk drawer. Not for revenge. Not for rage. I needed clarity. Structure. A plan. At the top, I wrote 2 words, what she took. I wasn't talking about material things. I meant time. Trust. Moments. 8 months. Our anniversary trip. Nights I sat beside her while she scrolled her phone, laughing at Brian's messages. Dinners I cooked while she texted under the table. How many times did I hand her my love while she handed herself to someone else? I started listing. Our anniversary in Cabo, the surprise promotion dinner I threw for her, my dad's funeral, the weekend I was sick and she stayed late at work. Every time she looked me in the eye and lied, that list grew fast. But the real shift came when I started writing a second list. What I know. His name, Brian, his job, works with her, same marketing firm, the nights, Tuesdays and Thursdays, the lie she told about me, emotionally abandoning her. The footage of him entering our home and then a line under that, 2:17 a.m., home camera footage, hallway, bedroom, evidence, concrete, undeniable. The part of me that still hoped for decency, still hoped she'd come clean, that there was some scrap of humanity left, died the second I watched her let him walk into my bedroom like it was his. So I made a decision. I was done playing defense. I emailed myself the footage. I saved the screenshots. I backed up everything twice. I contacted a divorce attorney, someone referred by a friend who went through something similar last year. We spoke for 40 minutes. I laid everything out. I told him I wasn't interested in dragging this into the mud, but I wasn't about to let her rewrite history while I stood silent in the wreckage. Then that afternoon, she showed up at the house. No call. No warning. She just walked in like she still lived there. I was in the garage, boxing up some of her old college junk when I heard the door open. I came inside and saw her standing in the kitchen, arms folded, tapping her fingers on the counter. You blocked me, she said flatly. I nodded. Yes. Why? The question hit me like a joke she didn't realize was cruel. Because we're done talking. There's nothing left to say. She tilted her head like I was the one being unreasonable. I came to get the rest of my things. Fine. Do it. She hesitated. You told people. Didn't you? No, I said. You did. When you started lying to them about me. That got her attention. I stepped closer. Calm. Controlled. You told your sister I emotionally abandoned you. That I stopped caring. That I pushed you into someone else's arms. And then you let him into our bed while I was out of town. She looked like she was about to deny it, but then she saw my face. Something about it made her pause. You don't know what it was like, she muttered. Being with you. You were so safe. I needed chaos. Something real. I blinked. You needed chaos. Everything with you was planned. You never surprised me. You never made me feel like I was living. I almost laughed. You wanted danger? So you brought it into the one place that was supposed to be sacred? I made a mistake, she said. No. You lived in that mistake. You hosted it. You fed it wine and turned off your conscience. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle. We stared at each other, and in that moment, something shifted in her expression. A crack. Not guilt, just fear. Of losing control. Are you going to show people the video? She asked. I don't need to, I said. All I have to do is stop protecting your version of the story. Her lips tightened. This'll get ugly. You made it ugly, I said. You just never thought I'd stop cleaning up after you. She left 10 minutes later. Didn't slam the door this time. And I knew deep down this wasn't over. Not even close. The next few days were like watching the slow-motion collapse of a house of cards, each piece falling, knocking over the next, unraveling the story she tried so hard to control. Except this time I wasn't the one being blindsided. She was. It started with silence. She must have thought I'd go back to playing the good guy, the quiet husband who swallows the shame and keeps the skeletons locked up. But when her cousin texted me some syrupy message about healing and moving on, I replied with one sentence. Did she tell you about the guy she brought into our bedroom while I was out of town? That was all it took. The message was read, and 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Her cousin, someone who had always defended her, always made excuses for her mood swings and sudden self-care weekends, was suddenly quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't rant. I just told her the truth piece by piece. The timeline. The receipts. The surveillance video. I didn't even ask her to pick a side. But people don't like being lied to. And one by one, the dominoes started falling. Word got around. I got messages. From her coworker. From an old friend of hers I barely knew. Even from her former roommate. Each of them some variation of, "I can't believe it. I'm so sorry. She always made it sound like you were the problem." And I realized something then. She didn't just cheat on me. She ran a smear campaign while cheating. She didn't just lie. She laid groundwork. In case I ever found out. So she could control the fallout. But what she hadn't counted on was that I wouldn't play the role. I wasn't going to be the silent ex. I wasn't going to nod and smile while people patted her on the back for being brave and choosing herself. I wasn't going to let her make me the villain in the story where she broke every rule we built together. The next time she reached out, it was a cold email. "No, hi. No, hope you're okay. Just, I heard you've been telling people things. I suggest we handle this like adults. Privately. Discreetly. Before this gets worse for both of us." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I forwarded it to my attorney. A day later, she showed up to our lawyer-mediated meeting wearing her best version of sorrow. Soft makeup, neutral colors, voice low and even. The kind of performance she'd mastered over the years. But this time, I wasn't watching as her husband. I was watching as someone who finally saw the strings behind the puppet show. She opened with her favorite phrase. "Can we just be civil about this?" "I'm civil," I said. "You're the one who brought an affair into a marriage and expected no consequences." She didn't like that. Her jaw twitched. Her fingers laced together like she was praying for patience. Or control. "I don't want this to get ugly," she said. "It's already ugly," I replied. "What happens next depends on how honest you want to be." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the lawyer and said, "He's clearly too emotional to negotiate reasonably." The attorney raised an eyebrow and turned to me. "You're the only one here who hasn't raised your voice." Silence. A heavy, bitter silence. Finally, she exhaled through her nose like she was the victim. "I just want what's fair." And I leaned forward, calmly, clearly. "Fair? You don't get to use that word anymore." I watched her face harden. That softness she wore when she walked in. It cracked. For the first time, the mask slipped. She wasn't used to losing control. Not like this. And it hit me in that moment. She thought she could manage this like she managed everything else. With charm. With lies. With half-truths and well-placed tears. But the story had changed. She wasn't writing it anymore. I was a week past. I didn't hear from her. Not directly, anyway. But her presence lingered everywhere. Like a bitter scent you can't scrub out. I'd go to the grocery store and see her favorite coffee still in the cart presets. Her shampoo sat untouched in the shower, half full. Her books, those self-help ones she never read but loved to display, still lined the hallway shelf untouched. I didn't throw anything out. Not yet. It wasn't about nostalgia. It was about evidence. See, I'd started collecting more than just screenshots and footage. I began piecing together the whole machine behind the betrayal, the timeline of deceit, the manipulation tactics, the gaslighting. She hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been strategic, calculated, and in that cold, calculated nature, she made her next mistake. Brian texted me. Out of the blue. Middle of the night. We didn't mean for it to go that far. It started as a stupid thing. A distraction. She said you were done emotionally. I thought she was leaving you. I didn't reply. I let him spiral. He sent 3 more messages, each one more desperate than the last. She told me she was unhappy. That you didn't care about her anymore. I'm not proud of it. She made it sound like she was already gone. Please don't ruin my career over this. There it was. The real fear. Not guilt. Not regret. Repercussions. And that's when I realized he was starting to crack too. She must have promised him some version of a clean escape, something quiet, something survivable. But now that his name was out there and her story wasn't holding up anymore, he was flailing. So I made one call. Not to him. To HR. At their office. I didn't go into details. I just asked some simple questions. Professional inquiries. And by the end of the conversation, they knew enough to start asking questions of their own. About work trips. About off-hours meetings. About company devices being used for personal affairs. I wasn't trying to destroy his life. I was just showing them where to look. By Friday, her email came in. It was venom dressed as diplomacy. You've gone too far. This wasn't supposed to affect other people's jobs. I never imagined you'd stoop to this level. I'm genuinely disgusted. Disgusted. That word rolled around in my head for a while. The audacity of it. The gall to be disgusted by the person you betrayed for 8 months straight. While lying, gaslighting, and manipulating everyone around you. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Saturday morning, her best friend texted me. She's losing it. Says you're trying to ruin her life. Honestly, I didn't believe any of this was true. But now, I think she's finally scared. And just like that, the tide turned. One friend told another. Then another. People who once swore she was too sweet to ever do something like that started going silent. Others messaged to say they were sorry they judged too quickly. A few even admitted they felt manipulated by her for years. She had a way of twisting narratives just enough to make herself the victim, no matter the crime. And me? I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. She spent months turning the truth into a weapon, making me question my sanity, rewriting the story before I even knew there was a story being written. But now I had the pen. And for once, she couldn't snatch it back. The next time I saw her was not in court. Not in mediation. Not even through a lawyer's email. It was in a place neither of us had claimed in months. The local cafe by the park. Neutral territory. Accidental. I was there getting coffee. She was already seated in the corner. Laptop open. Pretending to work. She looked up when I walked in and froze. I almost walked past her. Almost. But something in me said, no. Not this time. This wasn't her moment to sit comfortably and act untouched. I walked up to her table. Calm. Steady. She tried to look collected. Failed. You planning to keep following me? She asked, flipping her laptop closed, voice low. I was here first, I said. But I get it. You're used to assuming I revolve around you. She rolled her eyes. Still so bitter? No, I replied. Just finally sober. Her eyes narrowed like she didn't recognize the man in front of her anymore. And maybe she didn't. That man, the one who forgave, who rationalized, who smoothed over her sharp edges, he was long gone. I know what you're doing, she said. You're trying to make everyone hate me. You want to humiliate me. I shook my head. No. You're doing that all by yourself. All I did was stop covering for you. A beat of silence. She leaned back, arms crossed, like she was preparing to launch a missile. You think they all believe you now? That you're some kind of noble victim? I don't need to be noble. I just need to be honest. Something you haven't tried in a long time. That stung. She looked away. I thought she might get up and leave, but then she said something so bizarre, so twisted in its logic, I had to take a breath to process it. You don't understand what it's like, she said quietly. Living with someone who doesn't excite you anymore. Who doesn't chase you. Who just assumes you'll stay. That's when it hit me. She thought boredom was betrayal. She thought stability was a trap. That predictability was disrespect. I leaned in. I loved you. Every damn day. You were never a background in my life, you were the center. And you set fire to it because your ego needed noise. She blinked, lips parted like she didn't expect that level of clarity. Or truth. I made mistakes, she whispered. Don't insult either of us, I said. Mistakes are things you regret. You made choices. Over and over. She didn't respond. I stood there a second longer, looking at her, really seeing her. Not the woman I married. Not the woman I chased. Just a person who never understood the value of loyalty unless it served her. I turned to leave, but her voice caught me. Josh, what now? Not defiant. Not angry. Just hollow. I paused. Now? I said. Now you get to live in the story you wrote. Alone. And I left her sitting there, surrounded by half-truths and cooling coffee. Outside, the air was sharp, but it felt clean. For the first time in what felt like years, I breathed without holding anything back. There was still more to settle. Assets, property, paperwork. But emotionally, I was already gone, and she knew it. The papers arrived on a Tuesday, neatly sealed, no dramatic note inside. Just the quiet, clinical weight of finality. Her signature was there. Sharp, practiced, as if she'd been waiting to write it. I stared at it for a while. The same signature I'd seen on birthday cards, rental agreements, anniversary letters. Now it sat on a document that formally ended us. I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel shattered. I felt unburdened. There's a difference. I signed my part without hesitation. The pen didn't shake. No pause. No second guess. When I was done, I placed the folder on the counter and just stood there. It was over. Not in theory. Not in conversation. On paper. Legally. Clean. But life, of course, doesn't wrap up neatly just because a document says it should. That same evening, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. An old mutual friend who had vanished from both our lives after a falling out. She messaged me 3 words, "I believe you." I didn't know what she meant at first. Then she followed up. "She did the same thing to someone else before you. Different name, same pattern. You're not the first. Probably not the last." The blood in my arms went still. Suddenly, all the cracks made sense. The way she navigated arguments like a chessboard. The emotional sleight of hand. The way she always had an exit strategy, always a scapegoat. I thought I was the first betrayal. The great exception. Turns out I was just the next in line. And I don't know why, but that cut deeper than anything else. Not the lies. Not the footage. Not even Brian. Just knowing that everything I thought was unique, our love, our struggles, our history, was nothing more than a rerun of her old games. It made the whole thing feel counterfeit. Like I'd spent 6 years building a cathedral on top of a sinkhole. The next day, my lawyer called to confirm the final filing. It would be done within the week. Irrevocable. Final. And here's the twist: Brian quit. I didn't even know until a colleague of hers reached out. Said he submitted his resignation with no explanation. Just walked away. Apparently, the fallout at the office got messy. HR started investigating, whispers circulated. She stayed. He didn't. A poetic ending, really. She kept the job. Lost the illusion. And Brian? He got exactly what he signed up for: a mess. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I changed the locks. Deleted old pictures. Sold the bed. I wanted no traces left of a life that turned out to be built on staged smiles and empty glances. And yet, the strangest part? I wasn't angry anymore. It's like grief changed shape. It stopped burning. It just sat there. A quiet presence. A reminder, not a wound. I started sleeping again. Real sleep. Dreamless. Undisturbed. No more waiting for late texts. No more rehearsing conversations in my head. No more wondering if the truth would ever come out. It had. And it was uglier than I expected, but also freeing. She wrote her story. I just gave it a proper ending. It's been 3 months. 3 months since the signature. Since the last fight. Since I stood across from the woman I once thought I'd grow old with and saw nothing but a stranger with my last name. There's a stillness to my life now. One that's unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. The house doesn't creak at midnight with the sound of her pacing in the hallway, talking to coworkers, with her voice dipped low and sweet. Her perfume doesn't linger in the bathroom. No half-finished coffees left on the counter. No passive-aggressive notes about the thermostat. Just quiet. Just mine. I've started running again. Early mornings before the city wakes up. It helps. Something about the rhythm, the repetition, the forward motion. I stop listening to music while I run. I want to hear the world again. I want to hear my thoughts without her voice interrupting them. Funny how silence can be loud when you're not used to it. But eventually it becomes peace. She tried one more time. 2 weeks ago. An email. No greeting. No subject line. Just a sentence, do you ever think we gave up too fast? And for the first time since this whole thing began, I didn't feel a flicker of anything. No anger. No desire to respond. No fantasy of closure. Because I realized something in that moment, the version of me that would have answered, he's gone. The man who would have written a novel back explaining what she broke, what she never understood, what she destroyed, that man's been buried under months of hard truths and brutal clarity. I didn't reply. She doesn't get a final word. She already used it the night she let someone else walk into our bed like it was a hotel room. So here's what I've learned. If someone can betray you while looking you in the eye, they were never really with you to begin with. Some people don't want love. They want control, admiration, entertainment. They want to be the center of every room, even if it means setting fire to the people closest to them. I spent years giving her the benefit of the doubt, telling myself we were just in a rough patch, that all couples have bad seasons, that maybe I was too distant, too focused on work, too calm for someone like her. But no, she didn't want a partner. She wanted a mirror. And when I stopped reflecting her fantasy, she smashed it. So to anyone reading this who thinks their gut is lying to them, listen. To the way the air changes when they walk in the room. To the excuses that don't quite line up. To the growing ache in your chest when you start to forget what it feels like to be safe. Because betrayal doesn't always come with screaming and slammed doors. Sometimes it slips in quietly, smiling, with lipstick on its teeth. And when it does, don't wait to catch them. Catch yourself before you vanish trying to hold on to someone who let go a long time ago. I'm not bitter. I'm better.